Hello, I'm Chelmsford Town Manager Paul Cohen, and I'm joined today by Finance Director John Sousa, and we're here to provide a overview of the town meeting warrant articles. This year's spring annual town meeting session will be held on Monday, June 22nd at 7:30 p.m. at the Chelmsford High School gymnasium. Obviously, this is all different this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've worked with the moderator, the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and others in order to allow for a representative town meeting. Our goal is to have an efficient meeting, but also take care of the essential business that needs to transpire to operate the town in the upcoming fiscal year. Obviously, it's an unusual circumstance in terms of the economic impact to the community as a result of this pandemic. But the town officials gathered between the school committee, the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee, and the superintendent of schools and finance director and other municipal officials in terms of forging a way forward. At the time of this taping of this program, we do not have any direction from the state in terms of local aid that will be available to the community in the upcoming year. Obviously, the state has had a significant revenue impact as a result of the economic shutdown and the reopening plans and the imposition of different economic activities to support the program. And obviously at the local level where we collect receipts, such as things from meals tax, room tax, permit fees, even motor vehicle excise tax, those are all impacted by the fact that that economic activity is curtailed and restricted. So I guess the summary is there are significant unknowns. So what we did in preparing the budget is we had a full budget plan per normal during our normal budget season, January into February, and then obviously things shut down in March. As we said, we regathered last month in May, redeveloped a revised scaled back plan to move forward. And so again, it's based on our best understanding and assumptions of what may happen. And clearly, the budget and the operation of the town will be revisited either at fall town meeting and or other dates as we go through the fiscal year. We don't know what the impacts of the pandemic will be in the fiscal year. There could be a resurgence, there could be a further retraction. We, like you, will take it on an everyday basis. And again, we don't know if there'll even be federal assistance to the states to help cities and towns with the revenue loss. So with that, we've scaled back our capital plan, we've scaled back our operating budget, and what we're doing today is we're going to present you with an overview in order to help make town meeting efficient. And again, the materials for the town meeting in terms of the Finance Committee recommendations, the town's budget book, all those materials will be available on the town's website, which is chelmsfordma.gov. And again, you're welcome to participate or monitor or view the spring annual town meeting on Monday, June 22nd on Chelmsford Telemedia, or again in person at the high school gymnasium. There will be social distancing and other precautions taken in place. So with that, as a 27 article warrant, we'll go through the highlights of the meeting. The good news is in this warrant, and why we believe the meeting perhaps may be completed in one evening, is it's a rather understandable and basic town meeting warrant. There are no zoning articles. It's essentially the town's operating budget for the year ahead with some ancillary activities. So town meeting always begins with a recognition of reports of town officers and committees. That will be kept at a very brief minimum. I'll provide an overview, and then we'll immediately turn to the business of the meeting at hand. And that's Article 2. But right prior to that, though, we'll have a consent agenda. And what a consent agenda is that basically it's taking a group of articles that are really perfunctory or traditional, that don't generate much debate and discussion because they're renewed every year, such as just revolving funds or cable activity funds and so forth. Those will be done in a bulk, and you see on your screen the bulk of 9 articles that will be taken up, and we'll review those at the beginning of the meeting and then ask for a unanimous consent or approval of these articles. Again, these are articles that don't affect the property tax levy, They're just departmental operations in terms of running from revenues, such as the golf course. We hire a company that runs the golf course, they pay a management fee, and then the funds from that fee go to support the golf course. So that'll be the quick item, and again, that would remove a third of the articles from town meeting and leave us with 18 articles, which again, most are not very complex. Once we complete that business, we'll go to Article 2, which is the fiscal year 2020, with the current fiscal year operating budget that was approved a year ago. And obviously, the events of reality versus what was forecast, every year we have to make adjustments. So I'm going to turn it over to John Sousa, who'll talk about adjustments to the budget that's going to finish at the end of this month in June. John?
Hi, Paul. It's great to be back for another town meeting review. Under Article 2, we'll be adjusting the budget each year. You know, when we put the budget together, there are always some areas where we're either under budget in some accounts or over on expenses. And just to run through those quickly, the funding sources, we're fortunate to have we had a relatively mild winter, as everyone knows, so we have about $550,000 in the snow and ice line of the budget that we can use as a funding source, along with $121,000 from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund. So the main areas of the budget that are over, that will require adjustment, relatively small amount, $20,000 in municipal IT for some software upgrades and a transition.
They're on the next slide. We'll show the detail of what the...
Yeah, there we go. So transition to a new telephone vendor. Under public safety, that involves the police department. There's been some vehicle maintenance expenses, as well as recruitment. There's been the chief and his staff have been dealing with a number of retirements or staff transitions. So there's expenses associated with the recruitment and training of new officers. Under public works, one of the things we've experienced is a dramatic increase in the amount of solid waste that's been disposed of in the community, with more people home, cleaning out things and disposing of those. Facilities is a small amount of $13,000 for a transition from a 37.5 to 40-hour work week. And then under facilities expenses, just over $140,000 due to the amount of aging buildings that we have. That covers HVAC repairs as well as the complete elevator repair at the town offices. We're fortunate that that was when it was out of commission, the building was closed to the public due to the virus. And then finally, the last area, under benefits and insurance, $257,000. We've experienced a significant increase in unemployment and workers' comp costs, so that's the reason for that transfer.
Okay, thank you, John. And I should note, and I probably should have at the beginning of the meeting, all the articles on the town meeting warrant, but for two, were unanimously approved. Were approved by the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, and we'll point out those as we go along. So basically, the message of that is that there appears to be agreement amongst the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, School Committee, and the town financial officials, superintendent, finance director, myself, in terms of how to proceed with the budget plan. So thank you, John, for the review of Article 3. Article 2. Article 3 is the funding for collective bargaining agreements. We have two actions under this article, and that's to fund agreements with the firefighters union and the town's clerical union. And you can see the amounts there. It's a transfer of $227,742 from the General Stabilization Fund to fund these two contracts. And why it's from the General Stabilization Fund is that funds the contract for the current fiscal year. So under Massachusetts law, a multi-year contract for a union, the legislative body, or the town meeting in our case, has to fund the first year of the contract. So that's basically, they're going to get retroactive pay, basically going back to last July 1st. And since we've already set the tax levy, the only way to fund this is from the General Stabilization Fund. And we had put money aside in anticipation of this future agreement. So what we have are agreements for the firefighters and clerical that will run for the completion of this fiscal year as well as the upcoming 2 fiscal years. These agreements follow the pattern that we've established for all of the other town unions that are in effect. The next slide shows you the breakdown of the 3 fiscal years. The wage increase, which is the pattern of settlement for the town, is 2% per fiscal year. In this case, with the firefighters union, very similar to the agreement we reached at fall town meeting with the police patrol officers union. We've dropped the bottommost step in the pay scale in order to be competitive with the entry wage, but the top step remains. So in essence, we've gone from 6 steps to 5 steps in the pay scale. And then as part of the mediated agreement, we increased the EMT stipend by 1%. And then there were various language changes regarding the operations of the department that the fire chief and the union came to agreement upon in terms of matters pertaining to hours of work, bidding of shifts, and recruit training and light duty work activities. So again, that's the nature of that contract with the firefighters. For the clerical employee agreement, it's even more straightforward. As shown in the next slide, it's just 3 fiscal years, including the current one, at 2% per year. So upon the ratification of these two agreements, the town will have all of its collective bargaining agreements in effect through fiscal year 2022. So basically, we'll be in effect for the upcoming year and the following year. The only exceptions to that is the town has still not reached an agreement with the police superior officers or the sergeants union going back now. This would be 4 years without an agreement. The town continues to make efforts to reach an agreement. We had hoped and sought and worked diligently to try to get one to bring you to this town meeting, and hopefully that will take place soon. The other contract that's outstanding now for 1 year is the clerical union, I'm sorry, not clerical, dispatchers union. And again, we will hope to and continue to work to bring that to conclusion. So that concludes the actions under the bargaining agreement. And I also will note that all non-union employees will have the same 2% adjustment to the pay scale as the unionized employees adjustment. So we then would move to Article 4 under the meeting. That's the Nashoba Valley Technical School District assessment for the upcoming year. The amount is $3.45 million. This budget for Nashoba Tech, very similar to the town, where it's a district. They assess the member communities and they receive direct state aid from the state, as well as transportation monies and so forth. And their budget is uncertain as well. But given the uncertainty and the fact that they have to go to the 9 member communities, the Nashoba Tech budget is unchanged from what was presented back in February to the communities, and obviously they will make changes as the year goes on. Again, the Finance Committee and the Selectmen support this article, and when we arrive at town meeting, we'll have expected action will have already occurred on the tech's budget by the towns of Shirley and Westford, who have their town meetings the Saturday before ours. So again, Chelmsford's the largest community in the Nashoba Tech with 200 students. We're 30% of the population in terms of member towns. We have the largest assessment, and obviously the assessment is based upon the student enrollment, and our enrollment was up by 14 this year, which was almost equal to the total district enrollment growth. So again, that's what's happening under Article 4. Under Article 5 is the Chelmsford Public Schools operating budget. The requested appropriation is $61.677 million. Again, this was scaled back. We originally had forecasted a budget that would have been $63 million. So that was scaled back by just over $1.3 million. And however, the budget sort of remains intact from what the superintendent and the school committee considered, and we're preparing to present to the Finance Committee in March when things were shut down by the virus. So what the superintendent explained to the Finance Committee and the school committees endorsed is they've reduced their budget by $1.33 million without impacting their structure of their budget. And how that was done was by 3 steps. First, they had an elementary literacy program that they're funding in the proceeds that remain from this current year's budget. So that resulted in a $250,000 savings next year. They also purchased their retirement buybacks from employees who were leaving at the end of the school year for retirement for $121,000. So that was paid in this year, where normally it's paid in the subsequent year. And then finally, the bulk of it was $962,000 in transportation contract savings as a result of the fact that transportation services ended in March. So they didn't have to pay transportation for March, April, May, and June. So what they've done is they've taken those monies, and the state allows a school district to prepay special ed out of district tuition expenses. So they've moved that money to that. So in essence, their budget remains intact. And again, we'll see where we are, into the new year in terms of what state aid brings, and also where the budget goes into the subsequent fiscal year. Because the expectation by all of this is that the economic impacts from the coronavirus will likely linger not only into this upcoming year that starts next month, but probably at least for another year beyond that. So the schools have their budget in place, and the superintendent will have at town meeting and will post online the detail of the school budget, which goes through position by position and department by department, expenses, and so forth. So again, the Nashoba Tech and the Chelmsford Public Schools details that will be available online and at town meeting. Article 6 is the town's general operating budget, meaning the non-school departments of the town, the general departments of the community. This is a remaining of the town budget. Now that we've funded the schools, we go back and do all the various town departments. There's 20 line items in this budget. You can see the almost 64 million comes from the tax levy. We're infusing $2 million from the stabilization fund towards this budget, which is extraordinary. We have an $11 million stabilization fund, but because of the extraordinary circumstances, this is exactly the purpose for having a stabilization fund. And we have a long-term plan of utilizing the stabilization fund this year and next fiscal year, and then being able to restore it so the town still has adequate reserves. So in essence, we've hit the rainy day that this fund was funded for. Again, with the assumptions of a 20% decline in state aid, as well as the declines in local receipts that we spoke about at the beginning of the program regarding meals tax, room occupancy tax, motor vehicle excise, the budgets have been curtailed back. I think the school budget ends up being about a 1% increase, and the general department budgets in this article are just over, I think, 1.3%. And so it just lists them line by line. And again, the detail of the departmental expenditures are listed here by line item, but the detail is in the booklet that will be available online and also presented at town meeting per normal. So that's sort of the overall operating budget of the town. Some important things to note as we go to slide 19, as you can see that, again, we're in an uncertain circumstance. We're projecting a 20% decline in local aid from the state. We're projecting a 14% decrease, or $1.5 million in local receipts from the motor vehicle, meals, hotel, permits, fees, and interest that I spoke of earlier, and the $2 million from the stabilization fund. On the expenditure side, which is the next slide, you see that, again, the budget expenditures are up only 0.5% above the current fiscal year's total operating budget. And you can see the 1.1% for the schools, 1.3% for the town. The big one, as always, is health and insurance budgets. That funds a 6.5% increase in our health insurance premiums, which was offset by a rebate by our health insurance provider because employees were not utilizing health services during the COVID scare, very similar to what we were seeing with auto insurers providing rebates and dental insurers and so forth. So that offset that increase, but it still came up to 3.28% or $800,000. And then the town's debt service decreases by over $1 million. Unfortunately, most of that is excluded debt, which doesn't free up monies because excluded debt is restricted as voted by the voters in the community to the debt for a particular project, and then that taxing authority goes away. So how we got there in terms of the budgets on slide 21 is, we reduced the snow and ice removal by $500,000 to $1 million, and that was the amount for the last 2 winters. So we're sort of hoping that we'll have another mild winter. We reduced our other post-employment benefits, which is basically retiree health insurance unfunded liability, by $500,000. Again, hopefully a temporary reduction in funding that unfunded liability that goes out 30 years. The debt service I mentioned earlier, there's $200,000 within the levy that is freed up by the reduction in the capital plan that John Sousa, our finance director, will speak of shortly. We have a sufficient amount in the overlay, which is the amount set aside for property tax abatement. We reduced public safety overtime, and we're replacing 1 fewer police vehicle. Article 7 is a citizen petition article submitted by Jerry Hall. He's seeking an appropriation of $50,000 to fund air quality studies within the neighborhoods of the asphalt plant of Oak Street in Chelmsford and the newly to be opened asphalt plant at the Westford Town Line. Neither the Board of Selectmen nor the Finance Committee support this article, and Mr. Hall will have an opportunity to make a presentation at town meeting on this request. Article 8 is the Finance Committee's reserve fund. It remains at the traditional $400,000 amount to be used by the Finance Committee to fund extraordinary and unforeseen expenses, as opposed to having to call a town meeting when such an issue arises. This year, with the tightening of the budgets, that $400,000 will be more than than likely heavily utilized, just because again we've scaled back without leaving much wiggle room for unforeseen activities. Which then moves us to Article 9, which is the fiscal year 2021 capital budget. John Sousa chairs the Capital Planning Committee, and he can give you an overview of where they were and where they are today. Thank you, John.
Sure. When we left the last capital planning meeting, capital committee meeting, we as you know, we recommended a total capital plan of just about $3.8 million, and there were a number of very worthwhile projects in there. Given all that went on in the world with coronavirus, we thought it was only prudent to scale this back with all the economic stress that we've seen. So if we go to slide 29, this will help illustrate the plan. So the original plan is shown in the left column, and any project that was not recommended for funding under the revised plan has been lined out, as you see. So I'll just run through the projects that remain. When we tried to whittle this list down, we really wanted to focus on projects that either enhance public safety or security, or things that may complete multi-year projects that were already underway. We also took a hard look at a number of the school projects after talking with our facilities and public works directors, because one of the issues we have is this year we're on a delayed town meeting schedule, so we don't have that time during the months of May and June for them to complete the bidding and the procurement that's necessary to do those public building projects. So going through this slide here, we have the capital plan includes $105,000 for some security camera enhancements around town at a few recreation areas and intersections. They'll be working with our police department to install those. There's a small project that completes a vault storage upgrade for the clerk involving disaster preparedness for records. It includes a complete renovation of the senior center kitchen. This, unfortunately, since a number of programs are not able to go on over at the senior center right now, we think this will be a good time to do this project to minimize disruption to senior activities and lunches. It includes $28,000 for computer replacement at the library. The library's on a 5-year computer refresh schedule for all of the ones that are used by the public. It includes $176,000 for public safety radio repeaters, $267,000 for a complete radio system upgrade for the fire department, which was last replaced in 2011. And then if we go to slide 30, it shows the second half of the plan. Includes $50,000 for GIS flyover update. That's going to update a lot of valuable information for public works and other departments. $188,000 for a school kitchen upgrade, basically involving HVAC work at 3 schools, the Byham, Harrington, and South Row. It includes $122,000 for some code compliance work at the Parker School kitchen, basically ceiling, floor, and HVAC exhaust equipment. And then finally, $270,000 for a substantial enhancement of security and surveillance systems at Chelmsford High School. So the total plan is just over $1.47 million.
Right. Thank you, John. The remaining articles on the warrant, now that we've done the operating budget and capital budgets, will move rather quickly, we believe. Article 10 is a request for a supplemental appropriation of $116,646. It's the additional cost to complete the partial roof repair at the South Row School. After now the work's been bid and it's essentially complete other than the skylights. And this was the final cost estimate as a result of the actual bids and state oversight. The town will receive 50% reimbursement on this project. Article 11 is an article submitted by the Board of Selectmen to ask the voters at town meeting if they wish to increase the size of the Board of Health from 3 to 5 members. This would be a charter change which would require it to go back to the voters at the next spring annual town election. The Finance Committee unanimously recommended against. The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends in favor. So again, the discussion here is not financial. It would be what should the size of the Board of Health be, 3 or 5 members. Article 12 is the renewal or continuing operations of the Sewer Enterprise Fund operating budget. This year's budget is $3.94 million. It's only up less than 0.5% from the current year to just reflect the the normal cost of operating costs. So again, no significant change in sewer rates or activities for the year. Article 13 is the Miland Avenue Sewer Pump Station. It's a transfer for $350,000 to reconstruct the Miland Avenue Sewer Pump Station. That station was built back in 1995. Last fall town meeting, the town appropriated $25,000 to do the engineering work. So again, we anticipate this is a needed and will be supported activity. Article 14 is the continuation of the town's Stormwater Management Enterprise Fund, $1.1 million, and includes the appropriation of $200,000 from the Stormwater Enterprise Fund free cash or retained earnings to purchase a catch basin cleaner vehicle. Again, we're now in the entering the third year of the new federal and state stormwater regulations. Article 15 is a continuation of the operations of the Chelmsford Forum. Again, this would be a consent item, meaning it's just a simple fact that we have an agreement with the management company for the forum. That revenue comes in, and then we utilize the monies to support the forum's operations. So again, no impact on the tax levy. Article 16, which was an ice chiller refrigeration system for the forum, that article has been withdrawn. There's no action requested. Repairs were done that extended the useful life, and so there'll be no request at this time. Article 17 was PEG Access Enterprise Fund. This is a $600,000 appropriation to continue the level staffing and level operations of the PEG Access Enterprise operations. This comes from the 4.5% surcharge on the Comcast and Verizon bills, and our revenues are holding solid in this era with people cutting the cord. Article 18 is to purchase a server for $20,000 for the PEG, Chelmsford Telemedia public educational and governmental enterprise fund activities. They need more server space. Again, this comes from the retained earnings under the fund, so again, there's no impact on the tax levy. Article 19 is the golf course enterprise fund. As I mentioned earlier, we hire a contract with a company to run the golf course. The revenues from that management contract support capital and operational expenses in the golf course. So that, again, remains unchanged at $30,000 with no impact on the tax levy. Article 20 is the annual approval of revolving funds as authorized by state law. Same thing, there's no impact on the tax levy of the town. It's just that the state requires to annually reauthorize funds such as dog pound and licensing, where the revenues come in from dog tag sales to support that program, and senior citizen trips. If there are trips that take place in the year, the revenue they collect for the trips pays the expense of the trip. So again, it's a perfunctory, or what we call a consent agenda item. The next Article 21 is $60,000 from the sale of graves and lots for the Cemetery Improvement Fund. We're nearing the final stages of the 3.5-acre expansion of the Pine Ridge Cemetery. This work that's going to take place will be screening loam, spreading the loam, hydroseeding, marking lots, and they'll also be constructing a third niche wall at Pine Ridge Cemetery because the two initial ones for cremations are now 85% capacity. Article 22 is the annual appropriation of $10,000 into the Community Action Program Fund to support community improvement projects that are usually undertaken by scouts and other civic organizations. This program has been in effect since the mid to late 1990s, and the annual $10,000 appropriation that's used by the Community Action Program Committee. Article 23 is a request from the Conservation Commission. The request here is to preserve the Cranberry Bog Dam. The request is $25,000 to remove large growth trees and brush from the Cranberry Bog Dam. They contracted, the Conservation Commission contracted with an engineering firm to do an inspection and evaluation, and they recommended that this work take place in order to maintain the integrity of the dam. So again, makes sense, has the full support of the Finance Committee and Selectmen. Article 24 is the annual appropriation from the Community Preservation Fund. Again, this funds the ongoing debt service from previously approved projects for open space, historic preservation, housing, and so forth that are approved by the Preservation Fund by previous town meetings. $50,000 admin fund. If you see on slide number 7, 61, you see the existing debt service on there. You can see the big item in their debt service is the town halls. That's being paid off this fiscal year. Article 25 is the only new request from Community Preservation Fund, and that's to appropriate $450,000 for preservation of historic vital records that are stored and recorded in the town offices. And you can see a number of the slides that show the photos and condition of these books. Article 26 is is easements to install a bus turnaround, to give the selectmen authorization to install a bus turnaround on a small portion of private property by an easement at the end of Ledge Road. Article 27 are the easements required by the state for the re-intersection of Boston Road and Concord Road. That will conclude the spring annual town meeting. And then there is one special article on the town meeting for a special, which is $700,000 to pay for the costs that incurred over the last few months with the sewer main break that transpired at Southwell. There's a number of photos there. You may have seen that in the media. So that summarizes the town meeting. And on behalf of Finance Director John Sousa and myself, we thank you for watching this program. We look forward to seeing you on Monday, June 22nd at 7:30 at Chelmsford High School. Thank you very much.